If you've ever wondered how one of the most in-depth, active, and greatest genres of metal, technical death metal, ever came to be, then you are in the right place. Be sure to stick around until the end of the video to get a full grasp and understanding on the history of technical death metal. Welcome back to the heaviest show in the universe. My name is Kane Irvine, and if you love stanky riffs, guttural vocals, and in-depth metal reviews, discussion, and theories about the absolute greatest GOAT genre of music in the history of the universe, then go down below, sauce me one of these bad boys, smash that subscribe button for me so you never ever miss an episode. So very quickly after the birth of death metal, bands quickly started expanding on what death metal could sound like, upping the ante with different time signatures, unique instrumentation, and techniques like string skipping, and of course the inclusion of other genres of music like jazz. And there were three key albums that really got this started, and the first of them was Watchtowers, Control, and Resistance. While this wasn't a death metal album, it took a segment of extreme metal, thrash metal, and fused it with a genre of music like jazz. And this created a technical masterpiece that was absolutely key in the rise of early technical death metal, providing a template of what death metal could sound like when you fuse it with a genre like jazz. Like, just listen to some of this crazy shit and you can hear some of the early seeds of technical death metal sprinkled throughout. But of course, the first actual technical death metal album was Atheist's debut, Piece of Time. Released in February of 1990, this is where technical death metal truly started to take its fuller form. And this album definitely deserves its place in the top metal albums of all time, undoubtedly. The production quality was pretty on point with everything else that was going on at the time, and the speed, technicality, and melodic structure of the music mixed with the absolute brutality of death metal made this album truly impactful. A huge aspect of tech death that sets it apart from other metal is having strong, audible bass, and that really shone through on this album, allowing the bass to have more than just a depth role. And the next album that laid the groundwork for tech death was The Key by Nocturnus. And before bands like Opeth were writing guttural epics, this album was the first concept album in death metal, most likely in metal in general. This album follows the story of a cyborg who travels back in time to kill Jesus Christ so that he can cement his own empire in place of Christianity. Metal. The use of the keyboard was absolutely insane at the time, as death metal was just straight brutality for the first few years of its relevance. These three albums laid the groundwork for the technical death metal scene, and they were truly death metal taken to the next level. A lot of future technical death metal bands would start incorporating orchestral elements, keyboards, and of course jazz fusion into their work, and that all started here with these three beautiful legendary albums. But 1991 truly saw the starting of the takeoff for technical death metal, with so many bands dropping albums and starting to tread water in this fantastic new genre. The big daddy of death metal at the time, Death, dropped Human in 1991, and this marked an incredibly different stylistic change in terms of musical structure and lyrics. Both Scream Bloody Gore and Leprosy were incredibly gore-based in their lyrical content, and Spiritual Healing took on more of social commentary on things like religion and the like. Human, meanwhile, looked into the human condition and the simplistic wants and judgments of the human mind on songs like Lack of Comprehension and Secret Face. 1991 also saw the release of Pestilence's Testimony of the Ancients, which took their music in a more melodic and technical direction, joining Death and Atheist, who released Unquestionable Presence that same year. What made an album like Human so impactful was the inclusion of musicians Paul Masvidal and Sean Reinhart. Paul's background in jazz and classical guitar, fused with Chuck's innate ability to write progressive and heavy, brutal music, fused together to create a concoction that, to this day, holds its weight as an absolutely amazing album. And of course, the epic drumming of progressive master Sean Reinhart, may he rest in peace, was integral to the solidifying of technical death metal as a subgenre of its own. Like, if you put Morbid Angel, Deicide, or Cannibal Corpse beside these bands at the time, then they would sound just like primitive caveman music in comparison. But after they helped Chuck record Human in 1991, both Sean and Paul went on to form Cynic, and they released the masterpiece Focus in 1993. And goddamn, this album is such a legendary piece of music, and please just listen to this if you have not yet. This album truly set the stage for the more avant-garde and esoteric types of heavy death metal that we would see coming out in the future. And it was shortly after the release of an album like Focus that Gorguts decided to transform from a normal death metal band into an avant-garde, all over the place progressive technical death metal band with the release of Obscura. And that album Obscura is so incredibly nuts, it's damn near impossible to make out the mixed timings and the tonalities that are being thrown around at times on that album. It's absolutely crazy. Sometimes I'm listening to that album and I'm like, damn, that's a stanky riff. And then others I'm just like, what in the actual is going on? And of course, in this time period, we have Opeth releasing classic after classic with Orchid and Morning Rise and My Arms Your Hearse. These are some of the most beautiful albums ever written in metal, and the musicianship and experimentation on these albums would set the stage for a guy like Steven Wilson wanting to branch out and help produce what would become even more influential and epic albums in the future, using the endless possibilities that technical death metal can present for creating beautiful music. Bands like Gorguts and Opeth were really carrying the torch for this kind of music in the late 90s along with death. And at this point in time, tech death was shooting out into two categories. On the one hand, you have the original technical death metal, which focused more on epic guitar work, speed and heaviness, and neoclassical inspiration. The bands representing that side would be Death, Atheist, Pestilence, Necrophagist, and Suffocation, to name a few. But then on the other hand, you had the progressive death metal side, which focused more on incorporating the brutality of death metal, mainly the vocals, with progressive elements like strings and keyboards, odd timing, atonality, and that was more often than not slowed down in tempo when compared to the original tech death bands. And some of the big players here were Opeth, Cynic, Nocturnus, and Gorguts after they released Obscura. And of course, both of these genres of death metal shared a ton of similarities like growled vocals and heavier music and odd timings, but more often than not, you could definitely tell the difference between both technical death metal and progressive death metal. But as the 90s came to a close, technical death metal really hit a low point for a few years. Of course, bands like Opeth would be releasing classics still in the early millennium, like Blackwater Park and Ghost Reveries, but the more death metal focused side, the more technical death metal focused side, was kind of dying out. So there was a low point in tech death from around 1999 to 2005. But after that, we started to see a huge rise and resurgence of technical death metal. Bands like Obscura and Rivers of Nile, Revocation, Fallujah, Archspire, Beyond Creation, The Faceless, Spawn of Possession, to name just a few, started taking tech death into the modern era. And this is fire, man. It's honestly the best it's ever been in this scene. Even the old school bands like Pestilence and Atheist got back in the game, both releasing albums in 2009, and Pestilence is still releasing music to this day. Tech death has never been better and more diverse than it is now, and we have the pioneers of the past to thank for that. Pushing death metal to the next level is no easy task. Pushing any metal to the next level is no easy task. But these guys did it, and thanks to them, we now have one of the most beautiful, technical, avant-garde, in-depth genres of music on the entire planet. So what did you think? Did I miss something extremely vital in the creation of technical death metal? If I did, let me know down below, because I don't want to miss it. Did you learn something today? If you did, also let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all your support. And if you haven't yet, be sure to go down below and sauce me one of these bad boys. Smash that subscribe button for me. And we will see you next time on the heaviest show in the universe. Long live metal.